Hello. Welcome back to No Me Callo, I Won't Stay Quiet. I'm your host, Jessica Lomelin, and today's episode is a continuation of last week's conversation. Sin Prejuicios without prejudice. Last week, we talked about the mask we wear, the judgments we carry, and the courage it takes to live authentically. So today, we're taking that a step further, diving into one of the biggest forces that keeps us silent and small. That constant question so many of us grew up hearing. ¿Qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to say? And if you grew up in a Latino household or honestly any close-knit community, you probably heard that phrase your entire life. And if you're anything like me, it probably shaped you, it followed you, or it maybe silenced you. Because ¿qué va a decir la gente? And what are people going to say isn't just words. It's literally like a warning. It's a reminder that our lives are never fully our own, that someone's always watching, judging, or always talking. So you already know. Get comfortable, grab your coffee, your cafecito, your glass of wine, or your cold beer, and get ready to sit and chismear with me. I remember being little, I think I was maybe around 10 or so, and I was getting ready for a family party. I was excited, full of energy, laughing, and twirling in my favorite dress. But as I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, I heard it. Ay, Jessie, no hagas caras, ¿qué va a decir la gente? Jessie, don't make faces, what are people going to say? And just like that, something shifted. And it wasn't just a warning about my expression or my hair. It was the first lesson I ever got about living through someone else's eyes. And from that moment, I started noticing it everywhere. How people would whisper, glance, judge, or shake their heads if I laughed too loud, spoke too freely, or wore something bright. And I began to realize that how I looked and how I acted and even how I spoke, all of it wasn't just about me. It was about keeping others comfortable. Even before we knew who we were. We were already learning to shrink, to censor ourselves, to hide pieces of our joy, our personality, our light, all of it for the sake of approval. And we were learning that our worth was measured by how invisible we could be, how well we would fit into someone else's expectations. And that lesson, trust me, it does not fade. It follows you into your adulthood, even into your career and relationships. And it quietly tells you when to stay quiet, when to compromise, and when to dim yourself. And the hardest part, we don't even realize we're listening. And then when you get older, it doesn't stop. The rules just kind of change, but the pressure is still the same. Because suddenly you're getting those phrases of, you're getting old, you should be married by now. Or don't wait too long to have kids, you're going to regret it. Or the classic, you're too focused on work, don't end up alone. And then I just sit here and think, like, why? Why do we measure someone's worth by who they marry or how fast they have children? Why do we act like the only timeline that matters is the one someone else approves of? Because here's the truth. Life doesn't come with a universal clock. The world will always have opinions, expectations, and timelines. But your life isn't theirs to dictate. And I want you to hear me loud and clear. I am not late, and you are not late. Your journey, whether it's marriage, children, career, healing, or discovering your purpose, it's yours alone. Not society's, not your family's, not your friends, yours. And sometimes that means standing alone. Sometimes that means making choices that others just don't understand. Or sometimes it means saying no to what everyone else expects you to say yes to. Because every step you take on your own timeline is an act of courage. And every choice you make for yourself, even if it goes against the rules, the whispers, the pressure, it's an act of rebellion. And it's the best way possible. Because it's like a declaration that your worth isn't measured by someone else's standards. So if you're listening right now and feeling that pressure, take a deep breath. Let it go. Your life is not a race. And your path is not a checklist. You are exactly on time, exactly where you need to be. And you have permission to live it fully. Boldly. But then there's that other kind of judgment. That kind of doesn't come from rules or tradition, but simply because you're different. Because you have energy, because you're confident, because you live out loud, you laugh too loud, you dance like nobody's watching, you go out, you explore, you take up space, and you shine. I can't even begin to count how many times people have looked at me and assumed something about me that wasn't true. And it was kind of comments like, she's out all the time. She must be an easy girl. Or she's always smiling. She can't be serious or grounded. Or worse, she's too loud, she's too bold, she's too much. And trust me, that is so draining because joy, confidence, and energy, they are not crimes. They are not invitations for judgment. And yet, in so many communities, we are taught to dim our light, as if being happy or free makes us less worthy of respect. So why do we equate someone's brightness with a lack of value? Why do we punish joy instead of celebrating it? And why do we tell girls and women, and honestly anyone who dares to stand out, that showing up fully is somehow wrong? And let me tell you this, if I'm alive and if I am free, if I am laughing, smiling, walking into a room with my head high, it's not by accident. It is because I have survived the tears, the heartbreaks, the long nights of doubt, and the battles no one saw. And it's because I have fought, I have struggled, and I have worked and healed enough to be able to feel joy fully again. And my light is not careless. It has hard earned. And it is a proof that even when they try to silence me, I chose to live anyway. And I want you to remember this too. Your energy, your joy, and your confidence is not for anyone's approval. It is yours. And no judgment, no whisper, no stare, no what will people say, qué va a decir la gente, can take that away from you. But I won't lie. Sometimes I did think back to the things people said about me when I was younger. The whispers, the assumptions, the judgments that felt like shadows over everything I did. And I remember that I was in high school already. I was in freshman year. I think I was about 15 years old. And I heard my mom come home very upset. And it was because other moms, the moms of my old friends during that time, will look at her and say things like, pues vamos a ver si Jessica se gradúa o si no sale embarazada primero. We'll see if Jessica graduates or just ends up pregnant first. Imagine hearing that about yourself as a teenager. Imagine the weight of knowing that adults were literally waiting for you to fail and that your success wasn't expected, it was questioned. And that instead of cheering you on, some people were silently placing bets against you. It hurt. It really did. And it cut in ways I didn't even fully understand at that time. And it planted something inside me, a constant burning need to prove people wrong. And it was not to please anyone else, not to seek their approval, but because I refused to let their words define me. And I didn't just want to graduate, I had to. And I didn't just want to make something of myself. I needed to show them, to show the world, to show myself that I was capable, worthy, and more than the judgment stacked against me. And for a long time, I lived from that place. Not from peace, not from joy, not from the love of myself. I lived from pressure, from the weight of expectation, from the fear of being seen as less than before I even had the chance to rise. But here's the thing. Eventually, that pressure taught me something else too. It taught me determination. It showed me what it meant to fight for yourself, even when the world isn't rooting for you. And that's the lesson I want everybody listening to hear. Sometimes the things people say to break you can become the fire that builds you. And that's exactly what ¿qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to say does to us? It builds this invisible cage around our lives. And you don't even realize you're trapped in it at first because everyone around you is living inside it too. So it becomes normal to shrink yourself, to edit yourself, to filter every thought, every word, every move through the lens of other people's approval. So we start making choices based on appearances instead of truth. We might say yes when we want to scream no. And we stay quiet, polite, small, because God forbid anyone thinks we're too much or too different or too alive. And let me tell you, I have been called too much my entire life. Too loud, too opinionated, too emotional, too passionate, too strong, too independent. And every part of me that made people uncomfortable was labeled as over the top. And for years, I tried to tone it down to fit into the mold they expected me to fit. But now I wear all of it like a badge. Because every time they said I was too much, they were really just seeing my power before I even recognized it myself. And everything they said I shouldn't be, my energy, my voice, my fire, my ambition, is exactly what made me who I am. And the truth is, those labels, they don't define me. They actually never did. They were meant to shame me, to silence me, and to make me smaller. But I chose to turn them into strength. So I took every whisper, every critique, and every sideways glance, and I built myself from it. I took what was meant to cage me and turned it into freedom. So to anyone listening, to who's ever been told they're too much, too loud, too bold, too different, hear me. Your too much is your power, your fire, and your truth. And it's time you wear it proudly, without fear of what anybody else has to say. And when you grow up hearing, ¿qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to say? It doesn't just stay outside of you. It sneaks in, quiet at first, and then it becomes a constant presence. You might start carrying it everywhere, in your thoughts, in your decisions, in the way you carry yourself. You begin to ask yourself that question before anyone else even gets the chance. Should I post that? Should I wear that? Should I speak my mind or stay quiet? Should I laugh too loud or tone it down? Should I dream big or keep it small so no one judges me? And slowly, almost without noticing, we begin editing ourselves out of our own lives. We start dimming our light, shrinking our presence, silencing our voice, and all to fit into someone else's idea of what is acceptable. We tell ourselves that our joy is too much, that our confidence is dangerous, that our energy is inappropriate, that our opinions are too loud. And before long, we forget what it feels like to live purely ourselves. But here's the truth. We do not deserve that. We do not deserve to shrink, to hide, or apologize for being alive. We deserve to live unfiltered, to speak our truth, and to exist fully in our own skin, even if it makes someone else uncomfortable, especially if it does. Because every time we allow someone else's judgment to dictate our choices, we are giving away pieces of ourselves. And the world has spent far too long teaching us to give ourselves away, to silence ourselves, and to make ourselves small. It's time to stop. It's time to reclaim our voices, to stop living for the whispers, the sideways glances, the judgment. And it's time to walk boldly, to let freely, to dream without limits, and to live exactly as we are and exactly as we were always meant to be. And you know what I've learned? People are going to talk no matter what you do and no matter what choices you make, no matter how hard you try to live your life on your own terms. If you play it safe, they'll whisper that you're boring, that you're too quiet, or that you don't have ambition. If you take risks, they call you reckless, irresponsible, or selfish. If you pour your energy into your family, they'll say you've given up on your own dreams. If you chase your career, your passions, or your purpose, they'll call you cold, self-centered, or uncaring. And if you express your joy, or your confidence, or your love, they'll judge you for being too loud, too bold, or too much. And the truth is, you can't escape it. You can't control it. You can't make everyone approve of you because the world will always have an opinion, whether you succeed or fail. So, ¿qué importa? Who cares? Let them talk. Let them judge. Let them whisper and speculate. At least let them talk about the version of you that's real. The version that laughed when you wanted to laugh, cried when you needed to cry, loved when your heart was full, and fought when you were being pushed down. And at least let them talk about the version of you that refuses to shrink to fit into someone else's expectations. Because here's the thing, the opinions of others are fleeting, but your life and your choices and your joy, your courage, those are yours forever. And wouldn't you rather have them remember the real you, fully alive, fully authentic, fully you, than a version that was quieted, edited, or hidden just to make someone else comfortable? And sometimes I think about my younger self, that 15-year-old girl everyone was doubting, everyone was waiting for her to fail. Everyone was ready to write her story for her before she even had a chance to live it. And I really wish I could go back and sit with her, look her in the eyes and tell her, Jessie, don't let their voices define you. Don't shrink yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. Don't apologize for being loud, for being ambitious, for having dreams that scare people. And don't ever think that their doubts have any power over your potential. And I would tell her, you are going to be okay. You are going to survive the whispers, the sideways glances, the judgment. You are going to rise every time they try to push you down. And more than that, you are going to build something beautiful, something real, and something that belongs entirely to you. Because she deserved to hear that. And everyone deserves that. Every person who's ever been silenced, judged, or underestimated deserves to hear that. We all deserve to be reminded that our worth is not measured by what others think, and our lives are not theirs to decide. So to everyone listening right now, I see you. I hear you. Your voice matters. Your light matters. And your dreams matter. And no one has the right to tell you otherwise. And maybe you grew up like me, hearing that your dreams were too big, that you were too loud, too ambitious, too independent. Maybe people laughed at your goals, or whispered about your past, or judged you for the choices you made to survive. I see you. And I know how heavy that can feel. But I also know this. We don't owe anyone an explanation for how we live, heal, or grow. We only owe ourselves honesty. And sometimes I do sit back and think about those who spent their lives worried about people, worried about how they were dressed, what they said, what they dreamed. And I wonder, how many of their dreams died because of that? How many people never traveled, never studied, never left a toxic marriage, never spoke their truth because someone told them, ¿Qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to say? And it's sad, but it's also why I refuse to live that way. Why I speak up, even when my voice shakes. Why I build spaces like this podcast. Because silence might keep others comfortable, but I'll never set you free. And let me tell you something real. Even now, as a grown woman with a career, education, purpose, that phrase still tries to creep in sometimes. When I post something vulnerable, I hear it. When I speak too passionately in a meeting, I feel it. And when I choose myself, I sense it. That fear of judgment never disappears completely, but you learn to walk with it and not let it lead you. So today, I want you to say it out loud with me. No me importa lo que diga la gente. I don't care what people say. And say it again, but mean it this time. No me importa. I don't care. Because those individuals don't pay your bills, they don't feel your pain, and they are not living your healing. And I'm sure as hell they don't know your story. We spend so much time trying to be liked when we really need to be free. Freedom looks like not explaining yourself. Freedom looks like laughing out loud, wearing what makes you feel alive, saying no when everybody expects a yes. Freedom looks like you finally being you. And before I wrap up, I want to leave you with a book that I recommend, and it's called The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. And I connected this book to today's episode because it's about letting go of fear of judgment. Exactly what we've been talking about with ¿Qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to say? Brown encourages us to embrace our true selves, imperfections and all, and to stop measuring our worth by what others think. She talks about the courage, compassion, and connection, and reminds us that the pressure to fit in or to be accepted often keeps us from living fully. And this episode and this book share the same core message. Our lives should not be lived for others people's approval. They should be lived for our own truth, for our own joy, and for our own freedom. In reading it reminded me that the voices that matter most are the ones inside us, not the ones outside whispering, judging, or doubting. So next time you hear, ¿Qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to say? Ask yourself a better question. What am I going to say about me? Because that's the voice that matters. That's the one that carries you through the hard days, the lonely nights, and the big dreams. And I promise you this though, when you start living your truth, you'll lose people, but you'll find yourself, and that trade is worth everything. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for reflecting. If this episode spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that they are enough, just as they are. In the description of this episode, I will include the link to the book I mentioned. And remember, every Friday there's a new episode. Next week, we're diving into Primero Yo, me first. And this episode will explore how sometimes cultures can teach us to put everyone else before ourselves. It can feel impossible to set boundaries, value our own needs, or break free from toxic patterns. So this episode is all about reclaiming your self-worth, learning to say no without guilt, and putting yourself first, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. So we'll explore how to honor yourself, create healthy limits, and challenge the beliefs that taught us that self-sacrifice over self-care. So if you ever felt like your needs didn't matter, this episode is for you. So get ready to put yourself first. And remember, you are not here to please the world. You are here to change it. One truth, one boundary, and one brave moment at a time. You were listening to No Me Callo, I Won't Stay Quiet. I'm your host, Jessica Lomelin, and until next time.